Having talked about and discussed meiosis and the law of segregation, we're now going to take a look at what happens to gamete cells. This occurs in a process called fertilization, in which gamete cells combine to form an offspring. So to fill in our notes here, as a result of meiosis, gamete cells are produced by mother and father. Through fertilization, these combine to form a zygote or an offspring. Now, in using what we talked about with meiosis and using the simple eye color, capital B equals the allele for brown eyes, and lowercase b equals the allele for blue eyes, we're going to take a look and see if it's possible for two brown-eyed individuals to have a blue-eyed child. Let's start with the male gametes, or the sperm cells, and let's start at metaphase 2 of meiosis. And so at metaphase 2, going back to our discussion on meiosis, we had a homologous chromosome like so, with a brown eye allele and a blue eye allele. And so after anaphase and telophase 2, we're going to see the production of gamete cells that would look like this. This represents the male gametes. For our female gametes, we would have the exact same thing, starting at metaphase 2 again as well. And after anaphase 2 and telophase 2, production of two gametes that look like so. We're just using one cell. Usually there would be a second cell with two more production of gametes. We're just using two for the simplification to show a Punnett Square as well. So now that we have our gametes from our female and our male, we can use a Punnett Square to determine the genotypes that would be possible from these two parents. So to figure this out, the first thing we want to do is use the gamete from the mother. This mother gamete has a capital B for brown eyes, so write it in our Punnett Square like so. And the male has a capital B for brown eyes, so we'll write it in Punnett Square like so. Going to the next possibility, for the mother, it's a lowercase b, and for the father, it's a capital B. Capital B happens to be dominant in this case, and so we always write the dominant allele before the recessive allele. Looking at our third possibility, we can also have capital B from the mother. Again, dominant is always written first, and recessive, lowercase b, second. And for our final possibility, we have a lowercase b recessive allele from the mother and a recessive allele from the father for BB. Now, if we were to want to determine which eye color each of these would represent, the capital B, because we have at least one dominant allele, is going to be brown eyes. The capital B, lowercase b, heterozygous would represent brown eyes because we have at least one dominant allele. This is heterozygous. The first is homozygous dominant. The third is also heterozygous, and the eye color would be brown. And it is possible to have a blue-eyed child because the parents are carriers, they're heterozygotes, and so they each have a blue eye allele, and in this possibility, the child could have blue eyes because they have two recessive alleles, and so we would call this homozygous recessive. If we wanted to figure out or determine the genotype and phenotype ratios for these offspring, we could do so. The genotype ratio is the ratio of possible offspring gene combinations. So To do that, we need to look back at our Punnett Square. Our first individual, or first genotype possibility that we have is capital B, a homozygous dominant. And of the 4 total offspring possibilities, only one of these is homozygous dominant. So 1/4 capital B, capital B. We're going to set this up as a ratio. And our second possibility is heterozygous, and we happen to have 2 of these, so we're going to have 2/4 or 1/2 heterozygous. And finally, we have 1 out of the 4 homozygous recessive, so 1/4 homozygous recessive. The phenotype ratio is asking what the offspring appearance will look like. And so we want to know which offspring will have brown eyes, which offspring will have blue eyes. If we look back at our Punnett square, we can see that 1, 2, 3 will have brown eyes, so 3/4 will be brown, and 1/4 will have blue eyes. So this sums up and shows us how, through fertilization, gametes can produce a range of different possibilities for genotypes and phenotypes of offspring. And this is how we solve simple Punnett squares using dominant and recessive traits.